All right, today we're going on a quest. We're going to pull back the curtain on something that's, usually invisible, but totally critical. How huge companies go about making those massive multi-million-dollar IT purchases. So let's dive right in and see how these big tech buys really get made. So, have you ever stopped to think about it? How does a giant company actually buy something like a $1 million server array? Yeah, as you can probably guess, it's just a little bit more complicated than your typical Amazon shopping spree.
And yeah, spoiler alert, you definitely can't just add something like that to a cart and click checkout. Nope. This whole thing is a super complex, multi-stage journey. It's got its own rules, its own risks, and believe me, its own language.
That's why we're calling it the procurement quest. It's a real journey that takes a ton of careful planning, some seriously shrewd negotiation, and, oh boy, mountains of paperwork, all just to turn a simple, we need this, into fully functioning, humming infrastructure.
The best way to wrap your head around this whole process? Think of it like building a custom house. You don't just show up with a credit card and say, "I'll take it." No way. You need architects, you need blueprints, you need super detailed contracts, and all of that happens way, way before a single nail gets hammered.
Okay, so every quest needs a map, right? Well, in procurement, that map is the blueprint. And that brings us to step 1, defining with absolute pinpoint precision exactly what you need.
The first really critical document you're going to hear about is the Bill of Materials, or BOM for short. Now, this isn't some vague list like, we need 10 servers. Oh no, it is an exhaustive, super detailed list of every single component. We're talking part numbers for the cables, the connectors, even the little mounting brackets. The supplier usually helps double-check this, just to make sure absolutely nothing gets missed. Now, right alongside the BOM, you've got something called the Statement of Work, or SOW. And this is key. If the BOM is what you're buying, the SOW is all about what the supplier is going to do. Are they going to assemble the racks for you? Are they going to install them in your data center? Will they meticulously label every single cable? This document spells all that out so there are zero misunderstandings later about who's on the hook for what.
And here's the perfect way to remember the difference. The BOM, that's your shopping list, all the parts. The SOW, that's the instruction manual, all the things the seller is going to do. One's the nouns, the other's the verbs. And you better believe getting both of these absolutely perfect from the get-go is critical.
Okay, so we've got our blueprint drafted. Now, our quest moves out into the wild. This is step 2, navigating the marketplace. It's all about finding the right partners and, of course, getting their formal offers on the table.
Now, when it comes to suppliers, companies usually go down one of two paths. On one hand, you've got the standard stack approach. Think of it as we use Microsoft unless there's a really, really good reason not to kind of strategy. It definitely makes integrating and managing everything a whole lot easier. But then, on the other hand, you have best of breed. This is where you cherry-pick the absolute best tool for every single job, no matter who makes it. You get the best features, for sure, but man, it can be a total nightmare to make it all play nicely together.
But you got to be careful, because there's a huge dragon guarding that standard stack path. And its name is vendor lock-in. See, after you've been buying from one supplier for years, it can become technically and financially just about impossible to ever switch. And when that happens, you lose all your negotiating power. Suddenly, prices start creeping up, and maybe their support isn't quite as responsive when you really need it. So once you've picked a strategy, the bidding process begins. And trust me, it's a very formal dance. First up is an RFI, a request for information, which is basically just figuring out who's even capable of doing the job. From there, you narrow it down to a short list, maybe 3 to 5 suppliers, and you send them a much more detailed RFP, a request for proposal. Then comes a bunch of Q&A, some really intense negotiation, and finally, you ask for a BAFO. That's a best and final offer. Only after all that, you finally award the contract.
And don't even think for a second that this dance is quick. I mean, get this. One source mentioned being involved in a complex RFI/RFP process that took, wait for it, 2 years to complete. Can you imagine? 2 full years of meetings, documents, and back and forth, all before a single thing was even ordered.
All right, now for the moment of truth in our quest, the great exchange. This is step 3, where all that paperwork finally turns into actual physical hardware. It's time to place the order and take delivery.
But take a look at this timeline, because it's not instant. From the second the order is placed, you've got weeks of internal processing just to get it through the system. Then you can tack on another 4 to 8 weeks for the supplier's lead time. That's a huge delay, and it absolutely has to be baked into your project plan right from the very beginning.
So when the big day finally arrives and the trucks pull up, it is go time with a critical checklist. First, you've got to give the receiving department a heads up so they're ready. Then, every single box needs to be checked for any physical damage, and most importantly, you have to verify the entire delivery against that original bill of materials we talked about. Only after every single item is accounted for should the authorized person sign off on it.
But hey, the quest isn't over just because the treasure's been delivered. Nope. The final stage, step 4, is what we call life after purchase. This is the long haul. We're talking warranties, renewals, and actually managing all this new gear for years and years.
So typically, brand new hardware will come with a 1-year warranty. And during that year, if anything breaks or has a defect, the supplier fixes it, no extra charge. It's basically the safety net for your massive investment.
But of course, that hardware isn't going to last forever. The typical life cycle for this kind of gear is about 3 to 5 years. After that, it's time to either renew your support contracts or just replace it outright. This whole process is called lifecycle management, or LCM. And guess what? It usually kicks off a brand new procurement quest all over again.
So, after going on this entire journey, from the first blueprint through all the bidding, the delivery, and everything that comes after, what's the real key takeaway from this whole quest?
Here's the most important thing to remember. Large-scale procurement is not just a transaction. It is a deeply strategic process. The choices a company makes right here about which vendors to use, what tech to buy, what the contracts look like, those decisions will shape that company's capabilities, its budget, and its flexibility for years, and I mean years to come.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important question, one for you to think about. When you look at your own organization, is its tech strategy built for agility, for having choices, or is it slowly, maybe without anyone noticing, getting locked in? That's something every single leader should be asking.